Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Hi, and welcome to Straight Talk About God video. I'm Jack. I've got a really neat idea to share with you today. It's one of the favorite things. It just came to me, and I don't think, I've never heard anybody ask this question, and I'd be willing to bet that most everybody that's watching this, especially believers, has never heard anybody ask this question, or answer the question in a reasonable, logical argument. See, here's the question. Why did God create, in Genesis 1:1, quote, the heaven and the earth? Why did he do that? Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to go into a lot of depth to answer that question, because we need to get to the greater picture, okay? See, what we know is that he did a recreation process in Genesis 1:2. Recreation. The earth and heaven from Genesis 1:1 is not the same as the earth that appeared in Genesis 1:2. Right? See? He did the recreation process of Genesis 1:2 because the earth of Genesis 1:1 was nearly destroyed, made a waste and a desolation. Now, look, you don't think that God creates waste and desolate stuff, right? You think he created Mars in a desolate situation the way it is nowadays? Huh? God might not create all of everything, a complete creation, right? He may leave some of it for somebody else to work on, okay? But whatever he does create is perfect, right? So he didn't create the earth without any land and waste and void and desolate and all that stuff. Plus, after Genesis 1:2, wasn't it in the fourth day, he talks about creating the stars and the moon and the sun for signs and lights and all that? Well, wait. In Genesis 1:1, it says God created the heaven and the earth. Did the heaven not contain any stars? Did the heaven not contain the sun or the moon or planets or solar system? Huh? Was it a heaven that was void? There wasn't, of course not, right? But after this cataclysm happened that practically wiped out the earth, a recreation process included the signs in the heavens, okay? So he created the earth's environment in order to make a suitable habitat for his created Adam, human being. That's the word in Hebrew. It's Adam. That means human being. It wasn't Adam's name. His name was probably Fred. Okay. Okay, so we have to remember that the end of God's plan for humanity is setting up an earthly kingdom. The millennium, right? In Revelation, the 1,000 years, ruled by Jesus, right? The Logos, the Word of God, okay? And with the administrative help of transformed humans, okay? These are the humans who God has, quote, glorified into God beings. And the end of God's earthly kingdom is the additional glorification of those who have chosen to follow God during the 1,000-year kingdom. It's all right in the Bible, you know. Okay? So this is the why the why, that the recreation process of Genesis 1:2 was done. Well, okay. How about some historical things? Okay, historic things we know. After the environment, God created the human race, Adam. Okay? The race would have remained pure and supplied God with many generations of, quote, pure humans. Okay? However, a bunch of angels got together and decided that they wanted to join themselves genetically with human beings. No, God didn't like that, so he wiped them all out with the flood. Boom. Okay? Okay, see? Then God started over with Noah, who still had a pure bloodline. He wasn't infected by the rotten angels. His DNA was still okay. Pardon the rhyme. Okay? And then after that, he selected Noah's grandson, many times removed, Abram, to foster a pure family. And then out of the family grew a nation of humans that would be tasked by God, given the job by God, to let the rest of humanity know that he's going to set up a kingdom on the earth. Okay? That was their job. Be a witness to the rest of the earth for God, the nation. Okay? And God also set down his principles in writing, right? The Bible. And he sent his son with the same message, right? But a little bit different, because his son, Jesus, his word was backed up by a lot of supernatural miracles, right? He must be God's son. He could, whatever, okay? Miracles. So God's, all these avenues would reveal the coming kingdom. And not only that, but how humanity could be guide humanity into being able to participate in that kingdom. Okay. Got to be a way to get on God's side, right? Okay? So the plan, as I said before, would culminate with the millennium, right? So we know what God is doing from Ephesians 1:4 and 5, and Genesis 1:2. Okay? What God is doing with humans. Okay? He laid out a 7,000-year plan for humanity. You see, Ephesians 4:4 and 5, it's important to notice, tell how certain humans were on God's list before Genesis 1:1. Paul says that before the foundation of the earth, God had a list of people he was going to call and say, do this, you know. Whoa, okay? And that's, of course, before the recreation process of Genesis 1:2, the second creation, okay? See, but we also know why he's doing it. He's making up a group who will eventually become part of himself. Like Jesus, right? Glorified, like Jesus, right? Wait a minute. Yeah, right. Okay, well, that's good. You know, being like Jesus, that's great. But it only explains why God works with humans. It doesn't explain or help us understand why God created in Genesis 1:1, why he created the initial earth, see? And again, the stars and all that were already contained in Genesis 1:1. What's going on there? He didn't create the earth in Genesis 1:1 for human beings. There weren't any human beings. There weren't any human beings in Genesis 1:2 until he created Adam. There were no human beings, right? But there were cities on the earth. There were cities on the earth. Well, who builds cities? Intelligent beings gather to do whatever they do, whatever. Cities. There were cities on the earth. This is in Jeremiah. Nice little passage in Jeremiah 4:23. he also says that there were no men. There were cities, but there weren't any men. No Adams, right? And then he goes on to tell how all of that creation, all of that, the cities and all that, and he even names the Holy Land, was wiped out by a heavy cataclysm. Exactly what Genesis 1:1 says. If you notice that there's a gap of time between 1 and 2, you know, and Genesis 1:2 is a recreation process, somebody built those cities. Who? Well, it's been taught, and it's evidenced by Jesus' encounter with Satan, that the devil is in charge of the earth. Prince of the power of the air, isn't it? What it says? Okay. And God allows him to do all the stuff that he does, all the bad stuff that happens in the world. God allows that. There's a lot of stuff he doesn't allow, sure, you know, but God allows all that stuff, okay? So it was Lucifer and his helpers, his angel band, who were in charge of the earth, you know, and probably the solar system, and maybe even the whole physical universe that we see, you know, but for sure the earth. Herbert W. Armstrong says that they were in charge of the earth, to enhance the earth, to put the icing on the cake of the creation. So God put the basic creation down there, and he said, okay, tend the earth, like he told to Adam. Okay, tend the earth. Okay, Prince of the power of the air, helpers. The Bible also tells us some of the timing behind the scenes in heaven, okay? I mean, it says that when God created the heaven and the earth, the angels sang and praised him, and wow, great, see? So the angels were around before that, weren't they? Mm-hmm. So we know that angels, who are only created beings, okay? Created beings themselves, were around before God created the physical universe that we see. Okay? That sink in for a minute. So what we've got then, we've got the totality of God, whatever that includes. It does include angels, right? And they're sitting out on the back deck, and the morning paper is late, so God decides to create the physical universe. Yeah, I know, but can you think of any logical, reasonable reason for God to create the heaven and the earth? Why did he do that? If it wasn't for humans, why did he do that? Huh? Did anybody ever ask that question in your knowledge? Right? Well, we know the end of the second creative process, Genesis 1:2, because that's about the people, right? Maybe we should look at the end result of the creation in Genesis 1:1, right? But first we have to remember that God is everything, right? Everything we know about is part of God energy. It's made up of God energy, okay? Okay. So God is everything, right? And being everything, he knows what happens before it happens, because he sees the whole creation from beginning to end. It's like some big movie film. It's all stretched out in a row, and you can look any place you want and see what day the guy did this, and the next week he did that, and you can see the whole thing at once. That's the way God sees his creation, okay? Well, the interesting fact is that if God knows everything, he knew that a cataclysm was going to happen and practically wipe out the earth before he created it. In other words, he created the first earth knowing it would fail. Fail. Why would he do such a thing? You see, God has every little corner covered. He's better than the CIA, right? Yeah. So let's look more closely at the end of Genesis 1:1. Yes, the earth was devastated. Okay, we know that from Genesis 1-2. It started out in a devastated position. And Jeremiah says the cataclysm happened. Okay. What caused that catastrophe? Well, the most plausible explanation, and most commonly used, is that it was Lucifer's fall with his minions, right? He didn't just parachute down out of heaven, okay, right? The energy used by God to thrust him out was such that it nearly did in the earth and part of the solar system too, you know. I would by conjecture, I would speculate that there was some kind of maybe an instantaneous war in heaven with the rebellion and God, and boom, wiped out a bunch of stuff and threw them out of heaven. And doesn't Jesus even say something like that? He said, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Boom. Okay? Okay? The earth was devastated. The energy. Maybe you're beginning to see why God created the earth in Genesis 1:1, the initial creation of the earth. Didn't he know that there were certain angels, including Lucifer, especially Lucifer, that had just enough ego that if they gave him the opportunity, they rebel? He was in their minds, right? The same as much as he's in our minds, right? They're all made up like we are made up of God energy. They are part of God to the point where he knows everything about them. He knows all the hairs on your head. He probably knows the number of red blood cells that you have in your body at any particular time, because they're all part of his own. He just has to look. He knows, right? So, God just gave them the opportunity to prove themselves. Pretty much the same way that he gives us opportunities to do the right thing, right? Capital R, right thing. See, and God isn't pushy. You don't find God pushing people and do stuff here and there, okay? He invites and he opens doors. He opens doors, okay? He makes things possible for people to accomplish whatever they're going to do, okay? So he sets up things so that we can choose his way of doing things instead of ours. So he made up the earth in Genesis 1:1 to let those angels think that they could be in charge. And when he said no, they said, well, pow. So the bottom line is that God created the first earth to provide an environment for his angels to fall. When have you heard that? Is that neat or what? And what better explanation can you find? You know? It sounds pretty good to me. There is one interesting thing that's not usually connected, is that mostly it's been said that God is filling up the void left by the angels that fell, okay? And I accepted that. I passed it along a lot of times. But there's a hitch in that idea, see? The end of the second creation is when God fills his saints with his spirit and they become like Jesus. Like Jesus, not angels. Not angels, like Jesus. They will have full God consciousness, like Jesus had full God consciousness. That's how he could be both God and man at the same time. He was 100% man with 100% God consciousness. Okay? And full God power. Just like Jesus had full God power, right? These people that aren't people anymore will have the power to still a hurricane. And here's the good part. We're all just energy, right? A rock is just energy, and it's vibrating at a frequency that makes it look real and physical, right? Okay? these glorified people, just like Jesus, can look at that rock and change the frequency of the rock and create a fish. Make the rock a fish. Yeah, I know, but don't tell me God can't do that. Eh? God could do that. He could look at you and make you a tree, right? You wouldn't be you anymore. You'd be a tree, right? And these glorified human beings that aren't human beings anymore, see, that's why Jesus says that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Flesh and bone. See, he talks about his own body after the resurrection as flesh and bone, not blood, bone. You don't need blood when you're an angel, right? You don't need blood, okay? I mean, the Bible even says, ye are gods, right? Psalm 82:6. 82:6. And Paul says we will be better than angels, okay? So God is making up a new workforce, not of angels. He's making up a workforce of little himselfs. Himselfs. See? And he'll get on with the creation of what it says in Revelation, a new heaven and earth. A new heaven and earth. I want to be in on that. How about you? Thanks a lot for watching. God bless.